G'day, g'day. My name's Alan Gamble. Welcome to another episode, another year of Aussie Box Office Charts. Weekend number one of 2026. We're in for a quiet few months, so let's dive in with what remains of the exciting times. At number one, Avatar Fire and Ash still holding number one after 3 weeks with another $7 million, dropping just 15%. This is a holiday boost for a current total of $38.5 million. It's still a really good number, but we're going to compare it to Avatar 1 and 2 after the top 10, and I think you'll see some significant difference. It's still a smash hit, like there's no arguing. Avatar Fire and Ash has absolutely succeeded at the Aussie box office. But has it succeeded as well as the first two? And that's what we're going to see. We're also going to compare it to a Minecraft movie because it's now battling for the number one spot for the year. Will it catch Minecraft? We're going to see the numbers. We'll look at some predictive numbers to see if it's going to catch it or not. At number two, we have The Housemaid actually moving up to second spot in its second week of release, gaining 24%, bringing another $3.5 million for a current total of $8.4 million. Anaconda slides down to number three with $2.9 million, dropping just 17% in its second week for a current total of $8.7 million. Zootopia continues strong, gaining another 21% in its sixth week of release with another $2.3 million for a current total of just over $30 million. That's a good number for that as well. And opening at number 5 is the new entry, Song Sung Blue, with $2.3 million for a current total of $2.9 million. There will be a lot of movement later on in the top 10 for 2025 releases, as well as a whole new 2026 chart, which Song Sung Blue will be on because it's a 2026 release. But let's move on to 6 through 10. At number 6, we have SpongeBob SquarePants The Search for SquarePants, with another $1.3 million, its second week in release, dropping just 15% for a current total of $4.3 million. The Coral opens at number 7 with $830,000 for a current total of $1.1 million. Wicked for Good brings in another $500,000, its seventh week in release, dropping 29% for a current total of $31.7 million. That's a good number for that too. Nuremberg sticks around after 5 weeks in release with another $300,000, gaining plus 1% on last week for a current total of $3.5 million. And Duranda spends a 5th week in the Aussie top 10. It's almost unheard of for an Indian film, bringing in another $280,000, dropping 45% for a current total of $5.2 million. Alright, so Avatar versus The Way of Water versus Fire and Ash. We now have 3 weeks worth of data, and I should think looking at this graph should tell you a pretty clear picture. Now, none of these movies are bombs. None of these are box office bombs at all. That needs to be established context. But you can see the original Avatar and Avatar Fire and Ash opened at a very similar amount. Way of the Water opened slightly above that. But what you can see in week 2 is those lines started to separate. And in week 3, The Way of Water and the original Avatar were still well on par together. Fire and Ash is lagging considerably behind where those other two movies were at the end of weekend 3. Still a smash hit, but not quite where it needs to be. So with Fire and Ash not going to beat the original Avatar or The Way of Water at the Aussie box office at the end of the day, however long it takes to get there, it's not beating those numbers. That said, Avatar, the original, 2009, is the highest grossing movie in Australia's box office history. It's the only box office movie to bring in over $100 million in the Australian market. So not catching that is, that's not a disaster. Like, no one really expected that. But if we compare Avatar Fire and Ash to a Minecraft movie for the highest grossing movie of 2025, it looks like a closer battle, but I think it's also shaping up to be already decided, where if it keeps on the same trajectory, Avatar Fire and Ash is going to be the number 2 movie of 2025, while a Minecraft movie is going to sit comfortably as the highest grossing movie of 2025 in Australia. You can see there, Minecraft started slightly ahead, it stayed slightly ahead in weekend 2, and it has extended that lead slightly in weekend 3. Now, Avatars do have legs. They do stick around at the box office considerably longer than a lot of other movies, but we're seeing that less with Avatar Fire and Ash. So we'll keep track of it as it goes into, if we move into 2026, we'll see how we go. But that's the only real charts we had to look at this week. Let's jump over to the top 10s. So, first, the 2026 top 10, because we're in 2026. Anything released from January 1st goes onto this chart. Unlike Screen Australia, if it's a 2026 release, it goes on this chart. If it's a 2025 release, it goes on the 2025 chart. Call me crazy, but that's how I like to do it. I don't want a movie on 2 years worth of charts where it brought in $10 million one year and $5 million in the next year. That's inaccurate reporting, in my opinion. But this chart, we're not going to spend too much time on it because it's going to change rapidly over the next few weeks as smaller movies get on there. But Song Sung Blue is number 1, The Coral is number 2, The Pout Pout Fish with $300,000 is number 3, and then we have a bunch of smaller movies like Resurrection, Ikis, Champion, Hijacked, Psych Sadara, and Nuvu Naku Na Chav, which brought in $133. So you can see here, this is going to change rapidly, very quickly as we move forward. Let's move back over to 2025. So the 2025 chart is changing rapidly. A Minecraft movie still holds number 1 with $56.2 million. Avatar Fire and Ash is now at number 2, moving all the way up there with $38.5 million. Lilo and Stitch dropped down to number 3 with its $34.3 million. Wicked for Good moved up to number 4 with its $31.7 million, knocking Jurassic World Rebirth down to number 5 with its $31.5 million. How to Train Your Dragon is at number 6 with its $30.4 million. Zootopia 2 moves up with its $30.3 million. And that knocks F1 the movie with its $30.2 million down a notch. Superman stays at number 9 with its $24.9, and Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning holds out at number 10 with $23.6 million. So there's still changes that can happen to this chart as we get on, even though we're in 2026. We're going to keep an eye on it. We're going to keep it live until sort of Avatar Fire and Ash runs out of steam, because Wicked for Good is running fairly low on steam, been out for like 7 weeks. Zootopia 2 is about the same. So they're not going to bring in as much money. So Wicked for Good catching Lilo and Stitch, I'm going to say, is unlikely. It could happen, but it's going to be unlikely. Zootopia 2 could easily still catch How to Train Your Dragon and quite possibly Jurassic World Rebirth. We'll have to see how we go. We'll keep an eye on it because I like this type of reporting as opposed to Screen Australia. Not that I'm salty at all. I just think their numbers could be more accurate. Moving on to upcoming releases. We're now entering what's known as the Q1 drought, the January, February, no major new releases. We're going to get a lot of awards contenders as we normally get them in January and February before the Oscars. But opening in wide release January 8th, we have Grand Prix of Europe, which is a new family animated adventure directed by Waldemar Fast and starring Gemma Arterton, Thomas Brodie Sangster, and Hayley Atwell. We also have Novel Vague. The latest Richard Linklater directed movie finally gets its Australian release. And Christie, a sports biopic directed by David Michaud and starring Sydney Sweeney and Katie O'Brien. In limited release, so check your smaller and local indie cinemas, we have The Fire Raven, a Chinese crime mystery, Escape from the Outland, which is another Chinese war drama, and probably the biggest limited release movie this weekend, The Rashab, a Telugu language movie out of India that's noted to be and this is from the movie's page, a comedy, fantasy, horror, and romance. So I have no idea what's in store, but it seems to be quite popular, and it does have Hindi, Malayalam, and Telugu versions coming out. So it continues to be a fairly low release part of the year. Let's move over to streaming, which that trend continues. We have His and Hers, a new mystery drama series starring Tessa Thompson and John Bernthal. You can catch it on Netflix on January 8th. And The People We Meet on Vacation, a new romantic comedy directed by Brett Haley, starring Tom Blythe and Emily Bader, and it releases on Netflix on January 9th. So not too much coming out on streaming, not too many big theatrical releases. So I think we can expect to see The Housemaid, Avatar, Anaconda continue to dominate the charts for a little while. So a massive 8 movies watched for this week's challenge on firsts, thanks to the holidays, so let's dive in. First up was X-Men First Class from 2011, directed by Matthew Vaughn and starring James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence and Kevin Bacon. A rewatch for this one as I had not seen it since back in 2014. And yeah, it was fun. It holds up fairly well in the context of X-Men movies, as some really don't. A fun new refresh of the franchise that kind of ended up going off the rails, but, it started pretty good. Next up was 1993's Demolition Man, with a directorial debut of Marco Brambilla, and starring Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes and Sandra Bullock. A long time rewatch that I had not seen in more than, 25 years at a minimum. An absolute classic staple of 90s sci-fi action. Cheesy, very dumb, but kinda good, stupid fun. Next was You Are the Universe from 2025, a small Ukrainian sci-fi movie directed by Pavlov Ostrenkov and starring, as a first watch, Vladimir Kravchuk. A really great little sci-fi gem from 2025 in a year that there was not a lot of great sci-fi. I rated this one fairly highly, as it's a small-scale bottle movie with a limited cast and a high-concept plot. Big fan, but I know it's kind of my jam. Another 2025 catch-up movie was next, with It Was Just an Accident, directed by Jafar Panahi and starring Vahid Mosabri, and 2 acting debuts of Mariam Ashari and Hadis Patbatan. A really good immersive crime thriller with some dark comedy, and I expect to see this one floating around at awards time. It's just that type of movie. Next was another rewatch to get ready for the 2026 sequel with 2021's Dune, directed by Denis Villeneuve and starring Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaacs and Stellan Skarsgård. One of my favourite movies of the last 5 years, if not more. Brilliant, big budget, big scale, epic sci-fi by one of my favourite working directors. Not too much to say, it was great to rewatch this one for the challenge, so I'm not going to complain. Next was a small Korean action movie called The Old Woman with the Knife, directed by Min Kyu-dong and starring, as a first watch, Lee Hee-young. Fairly slow but tight action movie, lagged a bit in the middle for my taste, but was still fairly solid so far as 2025 action movies go. Moving on was another rewatch of a classic Aussie sci-fi movie of Pitch Black from the year 2000, directed by David Twohy and starring Vin Diesel, Radha Mitchell and Claudia Black. Great to rewatch this one as well. I think Pitch Black was one of the first few movies I bought on DVD. Still a great little sci-fi action horror. A little bit dated, but not too much to make it unwatchable. Finally was The Bad Guys from 2022, directed by Pierre Perifel and starring the voice talents of Sam Rockwell, Mark Marcon, Aquafina and Craig Robinson. A big fun action comedy animated movies with lots of cool sequences and heists, riffing on some well-known ideas and movies. Nice and short, can't complain about this one. Upcoming for this week's Cinechums Movie Challenge, Weekend 2, is highly rated. Those things that have a higher score than 7.5, 3.5 on Letterboxd, appears on best of lists, or was recommended to me personally. So let's have a look at my shortlist, which consists of a few rewatches like Mission Impossible, First Man, K-Pop Demon Hunters, as well as some 2025 catch-up movies like Late Shift and Saw, Sister Midnight, and some all-timers like Cleo from 5 to 7, The Sting and Tokyo Story. We'll see how we go. That is it for me this week. As Avatar and the big Christmas blockbusters die off, we are going to have some quieter weeks. The box office is going to go down and down and down until we get into maybe March was when it will start to pick up, and we will see how we go there. I'm going to use this time to catch up on all the missed 2025 releases and rewatch sequels that are movies coming out in 2026. So that is going to be my plan. I'm also putting together my top TV and top movies of 2025. So if you're interested in what I've seen, I did end up watching just shy of 300 movies last year. So we'll see how we go with that. That is being put together, but that takes time. But have a good one. Watch my movies. I'll see you next week. Bye.